If I were asked to describe Gunstar Heroes in one word, I'd probably do it like this. Damn it. Gunstar Heroes, an unconventional game from an unconventional developer. Brought to life in '93, Gunstar Heroes was the first game from, at the time, new developers Treasure. It was followed closely by their second game, McDonald's Treasureland Adventure. And that certainly was a game! It had characters and sprites and everything. Now let's never speak of it again. Treasure were formed shortly before the release of Gunstar Heroes by a group of former employees of Konami. Having become tired of being creatively held back by a larger company, they split off to begin developing unique titles of their own. Since then, they've created a slew of original and pleasantly offbeat games, and have become oddly attached to lava textures. But Gunstar Heroes is where it all began. As far as story goes, there's one there if you go digging. The intro cinematic is kind of vague and almost feels as though you're being thrown directly into a sequel. The story doesn't really become clear until you finish the game and piece everything together for yourself. But for the sake of edutainment, here's a rundown. Gunstar Heroes is set in the planet Gunstar 9, which has been under the protection of the Gunstar family for generations. In the past, the head of the family, Professor White Gunstar, defeated the world-destroying robot Gold and Silver, removed the four mystical gems powering him, and imprisoned him on the moon. After years of peace, Gunstar 9 is threatened again when an evil empire led by General Grey and Capcom's very own M.Bison — he's not actually M.Bison, he just looks like M.Bison, so I'm calling him M.Bison — unleash a plan to set Gold and Silver free. With his planet-saving days well and truly behind him, Professor White sends his three sons, Red, Blue, and Green, to recover the gems before the Empire has a chance to use them for evil. However, Green is quickly overpowered with their evil Jedi mind tricks and defects to the dark side, leading General Grey straight to the gems. And now, of course, it falls to Red and Blue to recover them and save Gunstar 9 before it's too late. As with a lot of other games from the same era, none of this is explained in the introduction. In fact, the Japanese version manages to use the same intro cinematic with a completely different backstory attached to it. The games themselves are identical except for the history of the characters, the history of their planet, their names, their motivations, their relationships, their beliefs. Besides that, they're exactly the same game. Technically speaking, the Japanese version is the one considered canon. I mean, they changed Professor White's name to Doc Brown. You don't argue with that. So after you've finally figured out what's going on and come to the sad realization that Gunstar Heroes has nothing to do with Back to the Future, it's time to start gunning the stars with your heroes? I really didn't think that sentence through. Straight off the bat, you're given the choice of one of two different shooting styles: free shot or fixed shot. Fixed shot gives you the ability to aim in 8 different directions at any time and is incredibly accurate, but does have one slight downside. You're stuck in the one place. Until you lift your finger off the trigger, you can't move. Unless, of course, you want to bunny hop your way around. Then you can. But if that's not your style, free shot gives you the freedom to run a gun as much as you like, but it isn't anywhere near as accurate as its slightly more realistic counterpart. These two options alone can change the way you progress through each stage and offer completely different experiences in-game. I've always preferred free shot because I find it's a much faster way to play, and I like being able to move around on short notice. Because I'm not used to being perpetually cemented to the ground, fixed shot just always ends in me being shot in the butt. But that's just me. In the end, it all just comes down to personal preference. The weapon system shares the same flexibility. There are 4 base weapons at your disposal: Chaser, Fire, Lightning, and Force. But where the system really gets interesting is when you start combining them. You have the ability to carry up to 2 different weapons at once, which you can use separately, or you can mush them together to create one beautiful, powerful love child. I do that. The freedom to mix and match weaponry was virtually unheard of at the time. While series like Contra and Turrican had well and truly delved into the world of weapon upgrades, neither, and no other series that I can think of, let the player combine those weapons to create a more powerful shot. All in all, Gunstar Heroes has a total of 14 unique weapons, which, for a game released in 1993, is kinda ridiculous. There are fire weapons, laser weapons, shooty weapons, explodey weapons, triangle weapons, Gunstar weapons, and even weapons that are intelligent enough to lock onto and track enemies all by them. God damn it, laser! And if the mood strikes, you can also take advantage of Red and Blue's impressive melee repertoire. Just like in real life, uncontrollably flailing your arms and jumping 3 times your height into the air can get you out of a tight spot in next to no time at all. As an added bonus, mid-air jump hugs are one of the most lethal moves in the game. Love me! Luckily for us, melee abilities give you temporary invulnerability, meaning that the age-old touch an enemy and die rule can pretty much be thrown out the window. Plus you have a health bar. That helps too. This is incredibly convenient because in true 90s fashion, jumping as well as being bizarrely lethal is by far the fastest and most convenient way to get around. Backwards jumping. If you're feeling particularly adventurous, there's also a semi-secret, semi-hidden, semi-convoluted button-pressing block move that can occasionally come in handy, and just so you know, what I just said was a complete lie, it's virtually useless. To execute the block, you have to hold down jump, shoot, and up at the same time, which doesn't sound difficult, but it is. By pressing those buttons, there's a tiny chance that you're going to block. Most of the time, you just end up jumping into the air, waving your gun around like a character in a bad western. But on the plus side, if you pull it off, it does protect your face. Sure, red and blue may never have children after this, but at least their faces will be pretty. But what makes this game so memorable has little to do with the main characters at all. Whilst being able to jump up, and get down can be pretty cool in its own right, the boss battles are where this game really shines. I've come to the conclusion that the developers at Treasure must have been mystical wizards with wizard powers, because the boss fights in Gunstar Heroes are easily some of the best I've ever played. They've managed to make every single encounter something to remember, which isn't an easy thing to do. Each battle is fun, creative, wonderfully designed, and what was I saying? The best part is that you never know what to expect. Treasure never gives us a conventional boss, so sometimes you'll end up with a mech, or maybe a guy attacking you with magical butt clouds, or occasionally a giant sentient vegetable with irrepressible anger issues. They even throw in a giant transforming alien robot. And who doesn't love giant transforming alien robots? Seven Force, as this guy is affectionately known, has a total of 7 different forms and is by far the most kick-ass boss in the game. Depending on the difficulty you chose at the title screen, you'll face either 3, 5, or all 7 different incarnations in the one battle. And this is where one of the things I appreciate most about Gunstar Heroes comes into play. It doesn't punish you for sucking. You're given unlimited continues regardless of the difficulty you choose. Treasure weren't like, well, you tried your best and you failed miserably, the lesson is never try. No, they encouraged you to challenge yourself, and at a time when so many games were brutally difficult, it was and still is a very welcome change. Treasure have taken an unconventional approach with the design of the game as well. Unlike so many other platform shooters of the early 90s, Gunstar Heroes doesn't take itself seriously at all. I present to you the following evidence. You can tell that the developers have had fun creating the game. The stages are completely different from one another, and most change dramatically midway through. One second you'll be playing a platform shooter and then a game of Monopoly, and let's face it, we all know how long Monopoly takes, so you're going to be playing that game for a while. And after you finally escape the Millband Pennybags Tricker's Temple of Doom, you get to play a space shooter too. Treasure have played on genre conventions, but they've done it in a way that makes it work. No matter how crazy this game gets, everything just sort of makes sense. Although this was the 90s. Everything made sense in the 90s. What? Gunstar Heroes isn't just another side-scrolling shooter. In my opinion, it's one of the best. Treasure pushed the boundaries of the platform shooter genre and created something truly unique. If it were up to me, everyone would have a copy. But it's not, and they don't. And this makes me sad, because Gunstar Heroes is one of the most memorable shooters the Mega Drive has to offer. 9 minutes? You listen to me for 9 minutes? Alright. I feel like I owe you something. Here, have some things to click on. And a picture of a cat. In a top hat. Tell me what you think of Top Hat Cat and let me know about some of the crazy games that you love in the comments below. Gunstar Heroes, they're the heroes, gonna take M.Bison down to 0. What do you think about that, X? I think it's a good idea.